All right, everybody. Hello. This is Dr. Rich Shepner. Hope you're doing well. We're hanging out here on the stream talking today about some very cool things, moving writing from the page to the web. But as always, before we start that, how's everybody doing? I'm just going to ask. Yeah, I mean, we have so much coming up, right? Like this is week 12 or week 11, excuse me, of most of our classes. For me, I'm finishing up my class. I'm doing the stream. I got one more stream after this. And yeah, I've got a bunch of things. Yeah. Jen, hello. India, hello. Yeah. Looking forward to the end of the term. Me too. This isn't to say that I'm looking forward to the stream ending by any means, because I love meeting here with everybody during the week, getting to chat with you all. As you know, last week, we talked about self-care in the writing process. If you haven't checked out that interview that I did with Robert W. Pfizer, do check that out. It was a great time. And he has had a lot of advice, I think, on the writing process and how to take care of yourself when dealing with, intense writing situations. So do check that out if you haven't just yet. So today's topic, moving writing from the page to the web. There's a lot of ways we can tackle this, right? We can think about it like moving textual documents, whether it's written by hand on a Word doc, Google Doc, and moving it to a web space. Our university is very familiar with WordPress. A number of platforms that you publish on may be powered by WordPress, but there's also things like Wix, Webflow, Squarespace. I'm sure you've been on YouTube and you've seen the advertisements that you can get a website up and running in minutes. That is true. There's a lot of resources out there that make it pretty efficient to get something on the web. And the trick is kind of refining that, given the demands of an assignment or a client, etc. And DSA just finished 2 intense research papers, exams coming up, working on a rhetorical projects. So yes, good luck with that too. And it doesn't stop, sadly, for the next 2 weeks and even the exam period. And so maybe, in Dia's case and Jen and others who are tuning in, maybe you're thinking about how to move your projects you're working on. So whether it's a research paper, something else like that, how do you move it to a digital space? What are some options that you have? So I'm going to go ahead and put something in the chat for everybody. It's a document that I have, and I'm sort of in this way showing you what I do behind the scenes on the streams, my notes and so forth. I'm going to put this in the chat. If you want to reference this for later, feel free. Also in the show description. So if you would like to check that out later on, feel free. But this is the notes from a workshop that I gave last year and the year before on web writing platforms and workshops. Now, I did this synchronously on Zoom before we sort of thought about the live stream being the kind of replacement for these sort of things on a weekly basis. So this page goes more in depth of what you could do on the web when you're thinking about moving your writing to a web space. And so I want to talk a little bit about this, and then I'm going to introduce a few special guests. I love having guest chats here on the live stream. So we're going to talk with members of the Professional Writing Students Association about their symposium, as well as Inventio, which is a online publication related to the PWSA. So we'll be talking about that here at about 11:45 or so. But as you all know, I'd like to spend some time kind of working through a quick tool or two that you might think about, and then we'll have the discussion, and then we'll kind of end with more suggestions in a bit. Okay, so again, before the guest chat, let's talk about some of the things I have here on the doc. When you start getting into web design and again, moving your written text to a web space, you're starting to occupy that role known as writer designer. So this is defined more explicitly by Kristen Erla, Cheryl Ball, and Jennifer Shepard in their book, Writer Designer. It's a textbook used in a lot of different classes and digital authoring classes. I've used it before, but I've kind of opted for different texts over the years. There's also an article that I typically assign in my class called The Rise of Templates and the Fall of Design. And because we've grown accustomed as digital writers to occupy the space of the writer designer role, one risk that's kind of come along the way is these drag and drop platforms. They've in a way made invisible a lot of HTML code and things that you need in order to publish. So the reason why a lot of people can get their websites up in minutes is because they don't have to do much HTML coding or anything like that. They can just use a platform that looks a lot like a Google Doc that I have here on my right, and it immediately uploads to the web. I use WordPress for all of my websites, right? And that I use for syllabi, that is. And it's very easy for me just to make changes. I don't have to do much to get it up and going. I can do it right on the fly. I sound like I'm in a, web commercial or something like that. I don't know, as I just sort of said that. But anyways, so what she sort of suggests here is that there's a problem that comes with erasing those coding elements, and design has kind of struggled that way. This is something to kind of be mindful of when you're working with these drag and drop platforms. Think about what the limitations are as you use them. And this is something I also talk about in my classes, but when you're occupying this role or dual split role, hybrid role of writer designer, you need to be thinking about not only what you put on the page, so the rhetoric. You need to think about the design conventions, as sort of Erla suggests, and you need to think about the code, everything that's under the hood of the web page. If you can understand those three, you're in a good space to be a pretty modern professional writer, in my view, because you're going to have people who are specializing in programming and coding, but you can have that conversation with them if you know just a little bit about what's underneath the interfaces you're working with. So these are all suggested readings that you can look at. And again, if we were, committing an entire workshop to just moving this, it would be probably an 1.5 to 2 hour workshop on that. I certainly cover that in my classes, but again, this could be useful if you want to do this on your own. And so what I've had students kind of sort of think about, and I encourage you to think about, is ask yourself, how might I take a document, written statement, for example, and organize it into a new web page? So the example that I've worked with in the past is the Western Hockey League's statement from 2020 on what to do in response to COVID-19. And they sort of, what they do here is they speak pretty succinctly about how they're minimizing contact with clubs and officials, contact with direct fans. This is very early in the pandemic stage. It's a very short press release. And so what I've had participants think through is how to adapt this to a web page. And the suggestion I have, and I'll suggest it many times over, I think, is the Adobe Spark approach to designing a web page. Maybe you've used Adobe Spark before, or if you have feelings about it. I need to actually log in so we can see what that's like. But Spark is it's a free sort of a version that Adobe has created as an entry point to using like their entire suite of offerings. So as you know, they've come to understand, and many people have discussed, Adobe can be pretty expensive. If you want to use things like Muse and other offerings that they have, gotta pay just a little bit. And I'm not remembering my password right now. I should have prepared for that a little more, but I think they'll forgive me. All right, so there we go. But Spark it's kind of this web application that allows you to do a range of things like creating Instagram posts and stories, infographics. It's very much like Canva, which I know a number of students are familiar with. But in terms of web design, I find it to be really intuitive and useful. So there are limitations to the free version of it, but that's often where we want to start when we're experimenting with these web platforms. We don't want to, subscribe to a massive service if we don't really know what we're doing and we want to experiment a bit. So what they allow you to make are pages, which are kind of interactive scrolling web pages that you can use to embed graphics, videos, much like you would do on something like WordPress if you're familiar with that. And here's my example I made a sort of adaptation of this Western Hockey League statement and moved it into an Adobe Spark page, which is basically a web page. And what's really nice is you can just copy paste the text in. It's going to format it for you pretty effectively. You can embed YouTube clips. So let's say that you are writing a text and you want to include a short video that introduces your topic. Your kind of abstract, your introduction is video oriented. You can drop that right into this platform and then wrap that with text that you've written. So here's an example. If we just take out this text, for example, and we say, let's look at the Western Hockey League statements. And let's open that back up. So let me get that. Western Hockey League, where is that? Most of the time, it's actually going to do the formatting for you already. That can also be a big challenge. You see right there, I just copy pasted it in. It's a uniform font. I don't have to worry about that material. You can embed pictures. You can change the theme as you go. You'll notice that as you start to get deeper into this process, that there are limitations to what you can pick, given the free sort of version of it. A lot of Creative Commons images you can use as well. Creative Commons, I may have talked about this before in the past, but Creative Commons is images and such you can use as long as you give credit where credit's due. And so in this actual interface, you can do just that. If you look over here, it says you can upload your own photos, but if you can find free photos, that allows you to add anything you like. And again, it's Creative Commons, which means that as long as you're giving credit where credit's due, generally you can use it. And so we've got a nice ice hockey picture right here that we can embed. So if you look at it, it looks like a pretty straightforward, like top to bottom, vertical scrolling web page where you can put your entire argument on. So I think it's a great start to web design. So later on in the program, I'll talk about some other options that you have, but those are also linked here in the document. For example, if you decide you want to start hand coding yourself, which if you take my 3000 level course in digital authoring, shameless self-promotion, you'll be doing that near the end of the term. But there are a lot of ways to get started up as well that you can do if you're not able to take that class. And so I've recommended a couple resources such as HTML5 Up, an open access web editing platform known as Brackets, and some other sort of cheat sheets and things you can think about to get started. Let me check the chat here real quick, and then we'll bring on our guests. Okay. So Adia saying, I've used Spark before, and it's quite user-friendly. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that just the ease of which you can get started after you've sort of done the logins and things like that, you make it pretty, reliable for me. And it saves in the cloud too, which is even better. You can upload it or start typing, and then just like with Google Docs, once you stop, it actually saves it in real time and it's available for you. So if you want to take it on the go, you want to do it on your phone or on your tablet, you can do that as well as on a web page and across different browsers. It's quite nice. And again, an introduction to Adobe's massive suite of options you have, such as Photoshop, Illustrator, Adobe Muse, all that. I mean, it requires a lot of processing power as well on computers. This is entirely web-based, so it's going to do that work for you. Okay. All right, so let's turn to our guests, and they are hanging out, I think, on the line waiting. So waiting very patiently. So let's go ahead and bring them in. I'd like to introduce Sandra, Silja, and Sashoy, who are members of the Professional Writing Students Association. And I'll let them talk a little bit more about their roles and so forth. So hang on just a second. And I can see you all smiling, so I know you can hear me, which is good. All right, let's try this. 1, 2, 3. Let's see if we've got you there. Yes. Don't you feel like you're on a real show and things like that?
It feels really cool, yeah.
I was actually going to say, this is so much more fun than Slack.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and take this down for just a second. Hide on the stream. Okay, awesome. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Well, welcome to the stream, Sash, Sandra, and Silja. The 3 S's. I love it. It's excellent. So I was so glad you could join us here for the stream to talk about moving writing from the page to the web, because you've got some really exciting things coming up with the web page. We'll talk about Inventio, but also a Symposium and things like that. But before we get started, do you all mind introducing yourselves and talking a bit about just what your sort of title is in the association with PWSA, and anything else you want to mention?
Yeah.
So let's start with Sash. She's on my right, I think. Yeah, on the screen that I'm looking at now.
Yeah, so I'm Sash, and I am the Symposium Director as well as the Writing and Publishing Director for Inventio at PWSA.
Excellent. And I think we have Silja. Sash, I'll say that, sorry. Yes, and Silja, please, go ahead.
And my name is Silja, obviously, and I am the president at PWSA.
Excellent.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sandra. I'm the vice president for the PWSA.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, and so there are 2 things coming up, right, with the PWSA. One is the Symposium you were mentioning, Sash, that's coming up in April. And from my experience, I need to pull this up. Is there a link to the current call or anything like that at the moment that we
No.
Okay.
Into the current call, it hasn't gone out yet. We do have a theme, but it's going out soon. It's exam season, so we didn't want to put pressure on students to send their abstracts in while they're working on assignments and exams.
Okay, yeah. And last year was liminalities, correct? Yes. Right? So I'm going to pull it up on the screen so we can see what that looks like, give people a sense of how it looks. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So this is a really cool project. Every year in late part of the winter term, and after that, students from the PWSA will present talks and so forth. It's a full conference. It's really exciting. And lately, this has been hosted online and workshopped after a number of months. So you were all, tell me about last year, what was it like for you to be involved in that process of preparing and, moving things from, workshops, maybe in sort of written temporary forms to something robust like this. It looks like it was hosted through WordPress. Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know, Silja, you and I were talking last year about this, particularly what was that like for you to be involved in that and see this move to the web? I'll put this in the chat where you're talking to, if you want to check that out.
Yeah. Last year I was directing the Symposium, but I never got the experience of seeing the Symposium in person. And so I think that was kind of good on my end, because those that did see it in person were kind of like, well, how are we going to move this humongous event into an online platform? Thankfully, I had great people by my side, including you, Dr. Rich, just to give us some feedback on the webpage. But our workshops were all through Zoom, all online. We have our faculty advisor, Dunia. She was helping us out, helping us get these ideas going. And so that's what would be happening on Zoom. Meanwhile, on the back end, we're working on setting up this website, and each panelist was kind of given their own freedom to open their own page and just kind of edit their page and present their piece in a way they visualize it. So we were just kind of there to make sure that their vision, is happening on this page. Everything is happening. Some people did videos, some people did some really cool stuff. I know like Sandra's page was really nice too. It was one of the first ones up. So it really surprised me how she was able to bring her piece, which I first saw in writing, and she was able to bring it into that. And it was really cool. That's just some of the really cool things we see in Symposium moving online. This year, Sashoy, correct me if I'm wrong, we may be doing in person and online.
Yes, so we're have not yet voted on, but doing a hybrid symposium. So it would be the executive council, and so like kind of the introduction would be in person, and then the panelists would be online, and then we would put it up later, so a couple of days later, so that people can actually come to the in-person symposium. So it's kind of a dual situation, and we're still working out the kinks.
Yeah, and I mean, and Silja, I appreciate you giving that backstory. That, I mean, especially for you, you came into this not having done the in-person version at all. Like the normal thing was to just do it online, right? Because of the demands of the conditions we were in, and then to think now about this hybrid model is really interesting. For even for sustainability purposes, that it might live on at some point. So that's exciting. But Sandra, can I ask you, what was it like from the creator's end? You posed this amazing piece, and to kind of go through that iterative process and compose a piece like Internal Flame. Do you want to talk a bit about that experience?
Sure. Thank you. Honestly, I think it really helped taking your course last year, Read 204, because I was not really familiar with the layout of WordPress. So I was talking to Silja, and then basically I had the script on Google Docs, but then I decided to play along with Canva. So basically I created my work on Canva first and Google Docs, and then I merged everything on WordPress. I think from the creative side is very interesting. It's fun to explore different areas and stuff. But I just kind of assumed how challenging it would be for the symposium director, to plan everything out. That's it.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering how many changes, or what was the revision process like as you started to move that to the docs, and then maybe have conversations with Silja, Sash, Dunyabaus, who's your faculty advisor. What was that like?
Oh yeah, it took me I don't know, at least more than 5 hours for sure.
Yeah.
It's you have to make sure everything looks well, and then whatever tiny details I didn't like, or the feedback that I received from people, I had to make sure I had to change everything. So it was a bit of a process, not gonna lie.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And look at this thing here. That's awesome that you've put into that, before and after work. Now, Sasha or Silja, can you talk about this a little bit? When Sandra was putting this on and other creators were, did you give them sort of permissions to do this draft and they would say it was ready, or did you have to sort of help them assemble that, or have one login? Because that's one really thing that's hard sometimes about these platforms, is trying to make sure everybody has access to do what they want asynchronously.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So we have the PWSA has the overall WordPress account, and from that WordPress account, we kind of added all the panelists as editors, and just to make sure everything worked in sync, we opened up a page for each of the panelists, and we would assign it to them, and we tell them, hey, this is your page. And so they could all log in from their WordPress account and have that page ready for them to edit. So it worked really well. We could have a bunch of people on the site, on the page, working on it at the same time. So it worked really well.
Yes, I was a panelist last year as well. And it was my first symposium, so it was all online for me. Mine is, the Summer of Truth. My Summer of Truth is mine. Yeah. So trying to figure out how the audience is going to receive it. So like mine is with cursive, and so I had to have a PDF version that people could download that is just in plain text so that they could follow along. There's also recording. So it was a lot of thinking about how the audience is going to be able to follow along with, and if they're going to get the vision and the intent of my piece in the form that I'm presenting it in. So there are a lot of things to consider, especially with online, because in person you can speak, you can hand out a sheet, but online you kind of have that stylistic choice, but then stylistic choices and accessibility don't always go hand in hand. So you have to think about all that stuff. And so Sandra and Silja were great for feedback. We also had our own our panelists, our groups, so they were very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But lots of revision.
Yeah. And you're speaking to some of the things I was talking about at the top of the stream, is that it's not just a matter sometimes of just copy pasting right into a doc. I mean, like, you had to think about accessibility, right? And how do I embed this audio file in a way that looks good and also works, right? So if we click on this, like, yeah, it's playing and so forth. But it's also downloadable. It's at a playback speed. It's an open format. So if somebody pulls it up and the screen's a lot smaller, it's going to work really flexibly. And then you having it as a PDF that someone can read later, is also fantastic. And you got lots of comments. Both of you did too. So that's awesome. And a good, indication that this stuff can work when it's online only.
Yes. I think Silja and Michelle, last year's president, did a very good job just hosting on Zoom. There was Q&A for the panelists after. There were breaks. There was time that the audience could just go ahead and explore, and then we came back together. So the whole layout of it was really well done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, talk to me about your plans for the upcoming. You've talked about maybe doing a hybrid. Do you think you want to do a unique website like in the past? Regardless if it's sort of mostly in person. Where's your thinking in terms of that?
Yeah. So for the symposium, so like Silja was saying, the PWSA has a website that we host all of our things on. So I think, so Liminality is a sub website of our head website. And so that's what we're doing for the future symposium, so that they're all in one place for the back end, but for the front end, it's linkable, they're interconnected. So definitely we'll be having a website for the symposium in April.
Fantastic. Okay. And could you tell me the name of that website? I think that the main hub one. I know last year there was somebody, a few students were working on a one that was part of a 4001 project, but just in case I have it, the most current one, what's the web address, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, it's the Wix one, right, Silja?
Yeah,
it's the Wix website.
Let me grab that.
You can put it in the chat, yeah, if you want, if you have it there. And I think everything looks good on the stream. I had it says we're about 9 minutes in now, so which we started at 30 minutes. So I hope I didn't lose everybody or anything like that. It hasn't crashed on our end, right? I don't think for any of you.
Yeah, the PWSA York website.
Yes.
It's
a pretty unique link, so hopefully it works.
Is it PWSA York? Is that WordPress?
Oh, there it is. It's not WordPress. We did it with Wix.
Wix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're still working on it. We have been updating the site currently. It is live though, but we're just updating in some information. Let me just grab it though.
And like I was talking about having one central hub, because the Symposium and Inventio are on WordPress, we're planning on moving the PWSA York website Wix to WordPress as well, to just have to streamline everything, really.
Fantastic. Okay. Awesome. So you have that, and Inventio is something also in your plans. Are you thinking about incorporating that as well at some point into the same website? Is that something you said?
Yes. So
Okay.
Inventio. So last year, Inventio didn't have a writing and publishing director. Plus, with everything going on, the Symposium was the focus. So this year, we wanted to kind of focus on both of them, the Symposium and Inventio, and so grow them together. We spoke to Dr. Brandy Easter about having her 4,000 class maybe redo the website for us. So we kind of want to restructure it into more of a webzine, and it'll be a place where professional writing students can showcase their work. So whether that's websites or podcasts or any of their writings, it's a place where they can submit their work and have it published. So yeah, we're working on revamping and restructuring.
Nice. Yeah, and let me ask you all like a quick question about this. And you've got these great spaces like the main hub that you're working on for the PWCA website. You've got and then sort of these special pages that are committed to this Symposium, and then some nice connections to Inventio. But I think if I could peel back for a minute, why do you think we should write for the web? I mean, generally, like students, you're doing this. Yes, you've been in some of our classes and stuff like that, and you're all rock stars from those classes. I'm really, glad to always reconnect with you all. But just generally, for anyone who's sort of thinking about this, like if you said to say some reasons why you might want to submit to the Symposium or to do kind of web work, what would you say to them?
Well, I think that 3 main reasons why students should submit work at be it like Inventio, Symposium, like Media, Exister, wherever it is really.
Yeah, lots.
The first reason is you build confidence, because I know how nerve-wracking it can be to showcase your work with people they don't know, but it's a learning experience. And then secondly, you get to explore different writing styles and genres that you like. You could create comics, poetry, nonfiction works, and it's different because throughout the year, we students usually focus on the academic style of writing. We don't really get to explore different sides. And then thirdly, of course, is you build connections. We are human beings. We like to socialize with people, so it will be interesting to meet people that you can that you share the same interests with. Yeah.
And to add to that, I think, at least for me, last year when I was doing as a panelist for the Symposium, I had this idea that to be published, it had to be a printed, written out copy, and then that's where you're considered a published author. But that's not the case. Publishing online, you're also considered a published author that way. And so it kind of just opens up the possibilities and the ways in which you can publish your work for consumption.
And it's imitating peer review, right, in a way that's really productive. And it's this is a months put into this, that you're talking to each other about your work. And it's something that you just like with class, want to publish, but it's not so much with the associated grade, right? So I wonder if, and I could put that maybe to Silja, when you're doing something that you want to do, but it's not grade oriented, but it's got those structures of responding to each other. How do you feel about that approach?
Personally, I would prefer that approach. I remember when I was doing creative writing and I was looking for a place to publish, I kind of had the same struggle as Sash. I was thinking, well, I don't know if this is worth it because this is the grade that I got, or do I need to receive a special type of I don't know, like compliment or something to feel like this deserves to be published. And I just sent it out. And at the time, I think it was Mac Media that existed. I don't know if you're active right now, but I sent it out to them and it got published. And that's kind of when I realized, wait a second, I could continue creating things aside from classwork, and I could share with all these platforms that we have, and get them published before I graduate. But I don't think a lot of us think like that. I think because of like school and grades, our first thought is this worth it?
Can I ask if any of you from last year's symposium have taken something you did in a class and moved it into that space so that it kind of has maybe a second life cycle like that, exists beyond the class? That's one thing I'm always trying to get students to think about is, what do you want to do with this beyond the class itself? Like, can I push you in that in that way to think about, submit it to a journal, submit it to the Symposium, submit it to Inventio or some other space, Existare or something like that. I think it's a necessary step. Like a lot of times for at least on my end, I want to push you, but how do you all feel about that kind of approach?
I think, funny enough, I think it's a good approach. I think hearing it from your professors to say, hey, maybe you could consider expanding on this a lot more. Because at least for me, that's what happened. I took RIT 1003, and Professor Kim, I did a piece for the class, and he was like, you could expand on this. This is something important that you should probably speak to a bit more. And so that's when I decided to participate in the symposium. And so the PWSA, the Symposium, Inventio, it's not just for professional writing students from other programs who feel that, they want to be creative, can be creative and submit your work to either.
Excellent.
That's kind of our main goal this year, to make sure that there are students outside of our program that know of these resources. And thankfully enough, we've had people from script writing majors, and they're like, can we participate in this? And we're like, yeah, of course. So it's
sorry. Go ahead, Sandra.
I honestly I think that as long as the theme of the issue is being followed, for example, this year's symposium, the theme is going to be metanoia. If that's followed and the grammar, the style, it all makes sense. There's really no reason why the work would be rejected, right? We are focusing on the essence of the work, the work speaks for itself. We are not really looking at the writer, what CGPA they have, what their appearance are and stuff.
Plus the workshops help with that, right? So even if you just send an abstract, you're like, this is the idea I have, the workshops really help you fine tune that idea into something concrete that is publishable.
Yeah. Last year we had a panelist send in an experience, just a paragraph or something they went through in their childhood, and they related it to the theme. And, it was so beautiful seeing that idea of hers expand to what it became in the symposium. I was like, wow, I had no idea. I mean, I looked at Dunia, I was like, how was this possible? The turned into various pages, and it's so well thought out. So yeah, I definitely could just send in an abstract.
Good. Yeah, and it's a talking point, right? And you've all created this really nice, productive space to have those conversations. So congrats to you all. That's awesome. So you sent me the current page, website that you have. So thanks for sending that. I'll put that in the chat as well, if that's okay. Where you've got links out to various resources. I know that some fourth-year students had lessons and things like that they were working on, from brainstorming to grammar lessons and such, that could be useful for anyone, including those us in the department. But also links to how you've approached past symposiums. And Sandra, you brought up this year's theme, metanoia. Do you all want to tell us a bit about maybe why that theme? And I put up this sort of definition that we've got on Merriam-Webster, which is a transformative change of heart. So you're speaking my language about emotion. I'm interested in that sort of thing. But yeah, where did this kind of idea come from?
also has a rhetorical context. So it's the device that's used to retract a statement. And being professional writing students and talking about rhetorical situation, visual rhetoric, all of that stuff, it really just spoke to us because there's a transformation of heart. There's also, and I think it kind of speaks to the transition from in-person to online to possibly hybridity. There's a lot of change happening and kind of just reflection. And I guess within the context of rhetoric, you can retract your statements. You can go back and make your point when you're creating your document. And so I'm quite excited to see what the panelists come up with this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, retraction, right? We think of like a lot of those things like tweets being deleted but yeah, being screenshot in some way and sort of how that sort of works in a digital space is very, very interesting. Yeah. Sandra, Silja, do you want to say anything about the theme?
Sandra?
Sorry, I was muted. But no, I mean, we had like 3 different ideas. And then we kind of like talked among ourselves, like the executive members, like which team we really like. And Metanoia really spoke to us because I think there are so many different ideas that you can explore with this. And yeah, I'm also excited to see what kind of work like people are going to produce and like what type of modes of like style, like will there be comics or is it like songs? We never know.
Yeah, what I really love about this is that like we each individually think of something separate when we look at Metanoia, something that relates to us on a personal level. So once we start receiving submissions, it's like you get to see all these thoughts that you didn't really think about. And it's just really beautiful when you look at it in a bigger picture, to see what everyone else is thinking, what everyone else wants to write about. But yeah, we did, like Sandra said, we had 3 ideas, and this is what spoke to a lot of us for this term. This
I could see somebody sort of playing with the idea of strike throughs and revisions and things like that. We talk about these texts that have significantly changed over time. And there's something about how you track that and demonstrate it like in an online space. We think of version histories we see like on docs, right? And I'm a huge nerd for that kind of stuff because it highlights like just how on the sentence level I've changed things, but I've taken entire blocks of text and moved them around. So to think about that kind of transitional moment is very cool. So I want to talk just a little bit more about Inventio. You mentioned you're working through it now. You're thinking about what to do in the future as a sort of magazine or approach that it's. And did I hear you say that you don't want to limit this to students in the department? That you're hoping eventually maybe you'll get submissions that move beyond the Symposium, but are kind of another space where you can get student voices in the mix across the university and maybe beyond.
Yes.
Sash, you were saying that? Okay.
Yes, I was. So right now, Inventio Symposium is very PWSA based. And so we're slowly trying to expand. We're thinking of, expanding to either the English department or the creative writing department, and then going as the years go by to at some point encompass all of York. But it's not a hard and fast rule at the moment. Any student from any program can submit works. And so I think the executive council and I were just kind of talking about how we want it to look. What do we want? Because we want it to be user friendly. We want it to be something that people can, read on the go, but also, listen to if there's podcasts and stuff there. So the previous vision was to make it a webzine. Now, I'm not sure if that's the vision that's going to continue moving forward, just because we're all currently in all of the PWC like the professional writing classes and learning all these things and all these different software programs and all the different ways in which we can adapt something for user experience. So we're still working out the kinks.
Yeah. And I'm always, I love, sort of classical rhetorics and ways we can complicate them, right, in the future. And I think this is a good space to think about that it's a lower barrier way of getting into publishing, perhaps, and it's a way to put out some ideas, right? So if it's about someone's reflections, as we're sort of saying here on the page, that could lead to a bigger project at some point. And I think that Inventio, being rooted in the idea of invention, is always that good starting point to get some feedback and then maybe think about what you want to do with it later. But it sounds really exciting what you kind of have planned and what you're working through. And so I can't wait to see how it takes shape in the next year or so.
Yes, me too. I mean, Silja and I were talking to Professor Brandy Easter about, she had asked Silja, what do you think if the students that are currently in the class would do something for Inventio, like redesign the website, redesign the logo? And Silja said that, it's really exciting because then it's not just for a grade, but you actually get to see it put out into the world. You can have your credits on it. So it's something that you can always refer back to, that you had a hand in creating this thing.
Yeah, and you can see who edited it. Like Ulysses, one of our students from last year, worked on that as well. So, or is that, yeah, okay. Yeah, so they were working through that. Very cool. Well, we're at about 12:20. I know that, and I think some of you have class soon, right? Do I understand that? Right, coming up. But this has been a fantastic chat. They always go way too quickly, so we could talk for probably another hour about these sort of things. But I appreciate you all coming in. Any last words, things you want to say that we didn't cover, things like that, while on the stream?
Yeah, tomorrow we're actually having a meet and greet at 7:30. So all the PWSA members are invited to this. It's just a fun night away from like academics, for us to network, get to know each other. Kind of like how when we step into breakout rooms and we have to be introduced. But yeah, just a fun night.
Yeah. Somebody is saying on the stream that the link may not be working. If you have it and you want to send it to me, actually on the stream or privately, I can put that on the chat as well. But that sounds great. A way to connect. And so did I hear that? Is that in person, online?
It's going to be online.
Okay.
So, yeah, probably via Zoom or Discord. We'll decide.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. PWCA has a Discord as well, if I remember correctly. And if you have that link as well, if you want me to put that in the description, let me know. I'm a huge fan of Discord as well. It's so easy and accessible. Okay.
I will send the link right now.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. What you've posted. Okay, yes, Jen, thank you for pointing that out too. We'll get that taken care of. But fantastic. I hope that goes well. Thanks for joining. And yeah, as your sort of the symposium and Inventio takes shape, like do get back in touch with me. I'll be sure to spread the word because I'll be doing this stream for the entire school year. So it'll be nice to, hype it up a bit more. Looks like we got some chat coming in too. Excellent. All right, and you sent that to me. Very cool. I'll put that on the site here in just a minute. But other than that, thanks again, and good luck with class today and wrapping up all of your intense research projects and that kind of stuff. So.
Thank you for having us here. It was it was a pleasure to talk about and stuff. Yeah.
Excellent. No problem at all. Please come back sometime too. So.
Okay. Have a nice day.
Bye.
All right. Bye. See ya. Okay. Well, folks, that was great. I again always love having chats here on the stream, and I've got the links that have been shared as well. So if you want to check these out, let me put these up here on my platform. And looks like that's going to come up in just a second. So, I mean, what I'm just to kind of offer some takeaways about what we were just hearing. I mean, it takes a lot to get these projects ready and online and so forth, and I think that the PWSA and those who you work, such as Silja, Sash, and Sandra, who have submitted works or have been behind the scenes and getting that material ready. It takes weeks and weeks to not only workshop, but just to coordinate and these kind of projects, and then to make sure that it's all functioning and so forth. And a lot of times when we're in sort of classes, we're turning in papers, we don't have to think about a lot of those things, right? We have to worry about sort of formatting and stylistic concerns, but we don't have to think about this kind of stuff, the coordination of whether everything sounds right, whether it's playing properly and so forth. And even though you're using these kind of platforms, such as Wix, WordPress, what have you, there's still a lot you have to do behind the scenes to make sure it all hangs together. So let me put these links in the chat too, so we can access them and find those sort of things later on. Because I like, if you're like me, you will want to talk to these students even more about all the stuff that's going into the planning and ways in which you might want to get involved. I think if anything, if you might be a bit nervous about, putting something forward with the symposium, if you want to be helpful behind the scenes, just to get some experience with it, to see how it works, it could be a great way to learn too about how to publish. For me, I'm also an editor for Kairos, a journal of rhetoric, technology, and pedagogy. And let me just pull it up. See that? I've never published with this journal. I've got a piece actually coming out in a few months, but I've been an editor since about 2016. And I always recommend one way to learn about publishing for the web is to actually work in an editorial capacity, because there's less at stake, right? Like you get to work with the authors, you get to do some copy editing, but you're helping them publish it. So they've done a lot of that groundwork in terms of the production side, and then you're kind of shepherding at that point, right? And so I think that it's a really nice way to get that experience while not having to worry about putting your name on it, right? Per se, as the author. So maybe you do this, for the 2022 symposium, and then the following one after that, try it from that point. And by the way, this is a fantastic issue. I should put this in the chat too. There's an entire roundtable about sound and space and narratives. It reminds me a lot of these kind of personal stories that were infused with liminalities. It's about turntablism. It's about sound and poetry, sort of in public spaces. Black sound matters and so forth. I mean, lots of great things going on with that. So little shameless self-promotion on that too. Okay, so we have just a few minutes left. Let me mention a few more things about web publishing. You can always talk to me more about this too if you like, but again, use this document if you're thinking about what to do. Now we'll go to there so we know where we're at. So HTML5 Up, if you're thinking that, I like WordPress, I've had some experience, but you want more of a challenge, this is a Creative Commons web template site you can use to download, raw versions of websites. And it's absolutely free. It's free because it's under the Creative Commons license. And this whole project, started by a web designer named AJ, wanted to make sure that, as practice really, that people could get experience with web designs that are pretty, basic per se, but are flexible enough that you can build it in your own way. So I can kind of show you behind the scenes what this looks like. I have to change my screen just momentarily. If you give me just a second to do that, I'll go ahead and take that off. Sometimes Doing this live requires a little bit of improv, but I think we'll get there. So let's just share my very busy screen here. Apologies for that, kind of. So using a tool like Brackets or another web editor, which I've linked there in the chat, will show you something like this. Now you're looking at this, and if you've never worked with code, it might be a little intimidating. But the really cool thing is that within like this web editor and others, text editors, you can actually preview what your web page looks like very simply. And so if you're thinking, I want to try to do some of my own hand coding eventually, this could be an interesting resource to use, because the website essentially has already been built with templates. And then once you've got a text editor, like the ones I've linked in the workshop page, you can start getting in there and kind of making some changes just to see what it looks like. So I could say, hello, this is Rich. Just do it in all caps because why not? We're experimenting. So what's nice is with Brackets and other sort of web editors like this, or text editors that are for the web, you can see this preview immediately and then make changes as you go. So just a light way of maybe getting into it. I would say too that if you are going to kind of experiment with this, don't expect instant results. Just use it as a kind of play space, or very fittingly, we might say a kind of Inventio space you can work with. Okay, so there's that. Let me just take that screen down, and I'll share another one. All right, so that's HTML5 Up. Really fantastic resource. Yes, Jen, thank you so much. Have a good one. And it's a long game, right, that we play when we're doing web publishing, and I think you're more than capable of doing that. Fantastic. Okay, so India is also saying that the link to the PWC, you have to be signed in. Very exciting stuff. Okay, so I've linked to that. Brackets. Chromebook users maybe want to use something like this called Quickfire, which is very similar. That looks like that web page might be broken, so we'll change that up at some point. And then you've also got a couple other hacks and resources. I use W3 Schools all the time for my own purposes. It breaks it down very simply in terms of how to use headings and such. There's also a cheat sheet you might refer to. How do I add like a page title, a secondary header and so forth? How do I add an image? A lot of us who are professional writers tend to do this kind of stuff ad hoc. Like, we're writers first and foremost, but we want to do some web work. So we're going to cobble together some different cheat sheets and resources to make it work. So again, these might be useful to you, especially because AJ has made the templates for you already, and then it's just a matter of building on those. That's the big trick. Okay, so we're at about 12:31. Again, really enjoyed talking with you all about this, especially talking with Sash, Solja, and Sandra about the PWC's role in the forthcoming symposium and plans for the website, as well as Inventio. I think you all have a lot of opportunities to think about publishing, so check those out. A little preview of what's coming up, and then I'll wrap up. So next week, we're talking about cozy vibes and the winter writing prompts. And this is kind of just a way to round out the term, right? We're all a little stressed. We need to think about ways, again, like we talked about in the self-care week, ways to kind of just create those positive vibes while we're working through our writing processes. And then we'll look again at maybe some programs that evoke those sort of winter feelings. And, what we might do in our own lives to be a bit more cozy, so to speak, because that's important, at least for me. I've got to have a pretty cozy environment. I've got mood lights and so forth that help, and so maybe you do too. I'd like to hear your thoughts. So check that out. It's on the website. I'll see you next week. And lastly, I just want to say, as always, I'm available in the Writing Center on Thursdays from 10:30 to 12:30 or 2:30, excuse me, just for the next few weeks up until around exam period. And so if you want to chat one-on-one, feel free to. Other than that, feel free to look back at the live streams at any point. We've got a lot that have been archived in the last few weeks. And I'll look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye. Have a good one.